12 books, 1 DNF, 1 5-star read, and 1 book that had me laughing out loud so much that I have to tell you guys about. This is my July reading wrap up. Before we get started, my name is Carly and I read and review historical fiction. I also read and review other genres as well, and this stack of books, it's pretty varied. A little bit more so than my previous months that I've shared here on BookTube. I've only been doing this for a couple of months now. If you like historical fiction and you want to know kind of like what's new in the world of historical fiction, you like book club type historical fiction, can't talk, then definitely subscribe and follow along because that's pretty much all I talk about. Let's go ahead and get into these books. I have some that really stood out this month, and I am very excited to tell you guys about a couple of these. And I also want to kind of give you a heads up about a few of the others. So let's just dig in. Up first, let's talk about The Bewitching, the brand new Silvia Moreno Garcia. See, one thing you may or may not know about me, I love historical horror, and I was really excited about this book because it had those kind of elements, just weird stories. That's really kind of Silvia Moreno Garcia's thing, and this one did not disappoint. There is one aspect of this book that I will tell you about in a second that it gave me the ick, but overall, I thought this was a terrific book. It is set in 3 different timelines, follows 3 different women, so we've got 3 POVs, and each of these women's lives are impacted by witches, and we're not talking about like the broomsticks riding, kind of cauldron stirring witches. We're talking about blood sucking witches, which apparently is like a thing in Mexican folklore. One of the things that I absolutely love so much about Moreno Garcia's work is how she incorporates her Mexican heritage and culture into her work. In this book, that was like the chef's kiss aspect of this book. The most contemporary timeline takes place in the 90s, and I found myself like really drawn to that character and drawn to that storyline, but I loved them all. In the more contemporary storyline, we have a young researcher who is studying horror books and horror writers and is writing her thesis about a horror writer that's kind of unsung in her eyes, who wrote a novel about a young woman who goes missing, when in all actuality, in that author's real life, one of the author's friends actually did go missing. In the most historical timeline, we meet that young woman's grandmother. In that timeline, there is a relationship between an aunt and an uncle that is creep factor like 10 out of 10. It's icky and it gave me the heebie-jeebies, but I powered through and I loved the book despite that. I will say that it knocked down the star rating a little bit for me because that was just like weird and icky, and like I truly still do not understand it. But this was weird and creepy and like hair-raising at times, and I really enjoyed it. Dead of Summer by Jessa Maxwell was a thriller that wasn't very thrilling. It is the story of a young woman who finds herself in this relationship with a very affluent man. He has taken her to his family's summer home on an island in the East Coast to meet his family. Well, once she gets there, she realizes she doesn't really know a whole lot about this guy. And then she learns that back in the day, her guy's close female friend went missing. And she starts to wonder, like, was he involved? Was his family involved? Then another young girl goes missing, and the story kind of evolves from there. It's got a pretty decent twist, but I didn't care for the writing. I didn't care about these characters, and I was glad it was over. The Unexpected Diva by Tiffany Warren was really good. This is what I was hoping The Personal Librarian would be like. I didn't care for that book, which I read in June. I really enjoyed this one though. So if you're looking to diversify your historical fiction and you want a Black authored book about a real Black woman in history that was very influential and very important and little known, this is a good book. This is the story of Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield, who was one of the first, if not the first, Black diva in the US and probably the world. It is very methodical and slow and character driven. It's a great glimpse into what life was like for a free Black woman pre-Civil War. Not only someone who was trying to make a living doing something that only white women had done before, but also just trying to stay free. I really enjoyed it, and I think that people who like character-driven novels about real women in history will enjoy this. The Last Bookshop in London by Madeline Martin. This was one of my TBR jar pulls for June. I actually pulled 5 books, but read 2. Whoops. And I really enjoyed this book. It was so good, but I also love World War II books. I like never get tired of them, but I've always been really drawn to World War II and like love World War II documentaries and films about World War II. I love historical fiction set during World War II, especially books about like home front life in London during the Blitz. Like that's kind of a niche thing, but I really love that. And that's exactly what this is. It's full of found family and great strong friendships. It is set in a bookshop, which is really terrific. It's also about the discovery of the joy of reading and just the power of books. And I felt like it was a warm, cozy hug, despite the fact that it has some, tragedy in here and hard times and rationing and bombing and all those things that I like in a World War II novel set in London during the Blitz. Pierce Oysters, y'all. Whew. This was another TBR jar pull, and I am so glad that I pulled this book out of that jar because it had been sitting on my TBR shelf for a long time, and it probably would have sat there for a lot longer. This is a literary fiction set back in 2010. It's about a family of oyster farmers who've been farming oysters in South Louisiana for decades, and then the 2010 BP oil spill hits and life changes completely for them. It is very much a character-driven story. It is very much a slice of life story. It follows all of the family characters, and I just loved how much Louisiana culture and history and all the warm fuzzies that I got from reading this. I am from Louisiana, so it was especially impactful for me. But if you like slice of life novels and you want to know a little bit more about what life is like in the deep south of Louisiana, it would be a great book. I'm so glad that I read this book, and I'm definitely keeping this as a forever copy. If the Tide Turns by Rachel Ruckert was my DNF of the month. I have started this book at least 3 times. I've tried all different formats, and I don't know, it starts off strong and then it just kind of peters out. And what I mean by that is it's slow. There's not a lot going on, at least for me. And more importantly, I wasn't in love with these characters. I think it's well written, and I found myself kind of chuckling from time to time, so it's clever. I just don't think I was in the right headspace to read this. It is the story of a young woman who really is trying to kind of create her own way and live somewhat independently in a time when women didn't do that. And she falls in love with a sailor who later becomes a pirate. I got about almost halfway through, and I wasn't invested. And there's so many other books that I need to read that I couldn't bring myself to finish. So I think I'm going to put this in a local little free library for someone else to try. A Resistance of Witches is a book that I was gifted by Viking that just published, and I was really excited about this book. It is a World War II witchy book. I love both of those things. So combined, I was like, yes, this is going to be great. What I will say is this was a pretty good historical fantasy. It was very witchy. So if you like your witchy books full of like spells and spellcasting and shapeshifting and grimoires and all that sort of stuff, this is definitely a good one. It does not have a whole lot of tie-in to World War II. I mean, Nazis obviously are mentioned throughout the book, but other than a couple of instances where they mention the Blitz, that's about it. The whole premise of this book is there is a young witch who is kind of a rising star in her coven. And she and her mentor discover that there is a very powerful grimoire out there that if it fell into the wrong hands, i.e. the Nazis who are actively looking for it, it could turn the tides of the war in favor of the Nazis. So they have to get this book. Well, as you can imagine, lots of stuff goes down. People don't make it. It's got other characters that somehow we start to focus on in the middle of the book. And it gets a little messy in the middle, but it ties together neatly in the end. I definitely would read another book by this author. In fact, I want a book about this witch's mother and her life during World War I, which is mentioned at the end of the book. So I'm curious to see what this author does next. This was a solid borrow book if you want something witchy during the fall that has a little loose tie into World War II. It's a good one. The White Python World Tour. You see the smile on my face. This was so good, y'all. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. What I will tell you about it is this is for my Gen Xers who grew up in the 80s listening to hair metal and want to get that little slice of nostalgia and remember when, because this is full of that. I will also tell you that I primarily listen to this, and I honestly think that's the way to go with this one because it's narrated by Will Wheaton, the Will Wheaton, remember him? And it was so terrific. I laughed out loud so many times listening to this book. There is even a Hans Gruber reference. Y'all, this book is hysterical. We see so many of the quintessential hair metal bands and just artists from those bands. There's a really funny scene with Bret Michaels. It was so good. It's all about a young drummer who kind of falls into this band that is about to make it. And with the help of his girlfriend, who happens to be a CIA agent, this band becomes the #1 band in America and now the world. They're about to go on this world tour when he is approached by his girlfriend and the CIA to join ranks with them to help infiltrate the Western Bloc and help bring down Soviet Russia through the band's music. It's just hysterically fun. This is summer fun at its finest in terms of reading. And it's already been optioned for a film or a show, and I will definitely be watching it. It was terrific, you guys. I laughed and just laughed so much at this book. It was good. Under the Stars by Beatrice Williams. This is her brand new book. And what I will say about this book is if you loved Husbands and Lovers, you are going to absolutely love this book even more. This is set in the same small town. It has some recurring characters, so there's some fun Easter eggs. It's all about a woman whose life is kind of fallen apart. She is in the middle of a messy divorce. Her husband is actually missing in action. And she has lost her business that she co-owned with her husband. Her mom happens to be a famous movie star who just got out of rehab and has never really had her stuff together. And now she is her mother's caretaker for the next 3 months. And they go back to the family home on this small island in the East Coast, and just stuff starts happening from there. There's also a historical timeline about a real shipwreck that happened in the area that the author ties in at the end of the story, but it's kind of weaved throughout. But I loved it. I thought this was some of her best writing. It just worked. It worked so well, and I love her. She can kind of do no wrong. Not all of her books are fabulous, but this one was. A Witch's Guide to Magical Inkeeping was an advanced reader copy that I got, as was Under the Stars, forgot to mention that. And y'all, this was adorable. If you loved the previous book, which they're not related in any way, it's not a series, then you have to read this book. This is like cozy fantasy at its finest. I'm not a huge cozy reader, but I did enjoy the previous book, so I wanted to read this one, and I think I liked it even more. It's all about this young witch who has lost her powers after casting a very powerful spell to bring her aunt, with whom she was really close, back from the dead. She's also a magical innkeeper, and she happened to be, at least before she lost her powers, the only witch who could rival the most powerful warlock in this magical universe. And he's really kind of taking over, and all the other magical leaders are very worried about his power and his having so much power. So this is all about her effort to get her power back. I loved this book. I will tell you that I found myself enjoying reading with my eyes more than listening to this book. I had copies, advanced reader and advanced listener copies. And though it's well narrated, there's just a lot of characters to keep up with. So if that is not your thing, I would say definitely read this one with your eyes. The Sicilian Inheritance by Joe Piazza was the BBFL's July book, which I did read and finish. Very proud of myself because, I don't know, I was struggling with keeping up with the comments this month or last month in the Fable app. And I think the reason why is because I only had an audio copy of this and I found it really hard to go into the chapter rooms and update the chapter rooms as I was reading while listening to the audio. So I don't think I'll do that again. I think I will only do book club books for the BBFL in a print version or ebook. This was fun. I enjoyed it. Was this the best book I've ever read? Absolutely not. But it was very enjoyable, and I would definitely encourage you to read this if you want something set in a foreign country where you feel like that place is a character in the book. So this is all about a woman who, again, has kind of lost everything. Her marriage has fallen apart. She lost her business. I'm sensing a theme here. And her husband is suing her for full custody of her kid. And she's got to get herself out of this like really dire financial situation. And when her beloved aunt dies, she learns that her aunt has left her a piece of property in Sicily that supposedly belongs to the family, but she's got to go there and claim it. And when she gets there, she realizes that her aunt has sent her on this legacy journey to discover what happened to her grandmother, who the aunt believes was murdered. It's twisty. It's got, the dual timeline. So we've got the historical timeline, the grandmother's story, as well as the contemporary timeline. And I enjoyed both of the timelines very much. This was enjoyable. I definitely did enjoy the audiobook, but I did not enjoy the audiobook and trying to keep up with it in Fable, if that makes sense. Lastly, my favorite book of the month, LA Women by Ella Berman, whose last book I did not enjoy. However, this was so good. A few caveats though. This is set in LA in the 60s and 70s, specifically in Laurel Canyon, which was kind of like the hip place to be. You had all the folk musicians and just various musicians and creatives in that area. It was a literary scene, it was a Hollywood scene, and LA plays a role in this book, a significant role in this book. I loved the setting. I loved that a lot of the various places mentioned in this book are still open now. You can still go there. You can go to Cantor's Deli, for example. The other thing I will say about this book, it is highly intellectual. It's very much in the head of these characters, specifically the main character, who is an up-and-coming literary star who moves to LA to finish her novel. There she meets another woman who is like the complete and total opposite of her personality-wise. She is kind of your typical manic pixie dream girl. She is a muse. She is a groupie. And she's also very talented at storytelling. So our main character encourages her to start writing, and she herself then becomes an up-and-coming literary star. They have this kind of frenemy-ship. I don't know if that's a word. And throughout the book, we are learning more about their relationship while also trying to figure out what happened to one of them who has gone missing after discovering that the other is writing a book about them. During all this, there are side relationships that are very important to the story and just enhance the story so much. There is a storyline about a closeted gay man that is really terrific. And it really is a great, another slice of life novel about what it meant to be a woman at that time who was kind of choosing her own path and didn't want to fall into the same path that maybe her mother had. I love how the author explored femininity and feminism in this book, and I could not put it down. I was so glued to this book and really enjoyed it. I really recommend it if you like that intersection between literary fiction and historical fiction. I think it's a really great book, and I anticipate that this might be in my list of the top books of 2025. So there you have it. That is my July reading wrap up. I want to know, Have you read any of these books? Do you agree with my take on them? If so, are you interested in any of these if you haven't read them?